So today I'm just going to be showing how to create molds of your 3D prints so that you can cast them in metal. So I am going to be casting some prints in metal probably in the next video, but for this video I'm just going to be going over how to make the molds and what you're going to need. So you're going to need some high temperature mold making mix. This is high temperature rubber. You can buy this from eBay. I will leave a link for it, and it works out at £33 a kilo with delivery, and the only equivalent is another one on Amazon, which is £45 for the same amount, so £45 for a kilo. The only difference being, I believe the one on Amazon is a little bit more runnier, and it's not a 1-to-1 mix, it's like a 6-to-1 or something like that, 8-to-1 or something. So you get a big tub and then a little tiny one, so, which I might try, I don't know, but because I'm only learning myself, I went for the cheaper one. I did buy some normal silicone rubber mold stuff, which I returned to Amazon because I don't know whether this was faulty, like out of date or something, or just a bad batch. But even if you follow all the proper techniques, such as a long pour, letting it work its way along the mold, it's just loaded with air bubbles. So, you know, and the air bubbles appeared the second it was mixed, so you didn't even really stir it up and there's just bubbles all over the place. So it's also very flimsy, and it doesn't say for certain whether or not you can cast pewter in this. It does say brass on one of them, but you know, I wouldn't want to be holding this or have this in my house and pouring molten metal in it if I'm not 100% certain. I did ask the supplier, and I also put in a query on Amazon where it asks all the people that have bought it, and no one could answer the question whether or not it can withstand metal. So I did make a smaller mold with this stuff of a skull head, which is also full of bubbles. So the only reason why I want to cast metal parts as well is some stuff you just need epoxy. So like I need an epoxy flame with an LED inside, so I'm going to make a mold today for this. And I'm also casting, I think it's a mythosaur, but I want this to be a keyring. 3D prints work great as badges, so you can gild them like that, like these ones, and they work great. There's nothing, you know, they work fine for 3D prints, are fine for badges, but not so great for keyrings. You know, chuck your keys down, it's just going to break. So it seems only logical to cast it out of metal, and it's just cool to be able to do that. You know, if you've got like fragile prints like this, the Dead Samurai, rather than paint this silver and have it wonky, because they all tend to bend eventually, and it's very flimsy. So if I can have this section out of pewter, it's going to look real because it's some real metal, and I can polish it up, and I figured that would just be a really cool thing to do. So I didn't count on the mess that I was going to get into, because I've already, like I say, I've already made a mold of this and it didn't work out. But like I say, it's a learning thing. So this is my new mold, and I've printed off 3 more arms, but I'm not going to be casting those today. I want a little bit more practice before I start using large amounts of this, because it is expensive, especially if you know there's a chance you can get it wrong. So the first thing you want to do is what's known as a long pour. So once you've mixed this together, don't just dump the solution into the mold. So you have to start pouring it, and then you want to lift it up, and this will make a thin stream, and that will strip all the air bubbles out of it. And as it pushes along the mould, the front edge, it pushes the air bubbles out as well. So that's the best way to get bubble-free moulds. But because this is so viscous, it's really, really gunky and thick. It moves really, really slow. So it sets fast. And I actually found it quite tricky to work with on the very first one. So, and the only reason why the mould failed was because I didn't fill the eye sockets. And this is like I say, there's lots of little things that you just don't think of, and that is I wanted to put this face down, and I just imagined that the mix as I poured it in would fill up the eye sockets, but it doesn't. It only goes so far in, and then once it's trapped off the ear, then it can't go any further. So anything like the eye sockets, if you're going to cast it face down, when you've mixed this up, you have to take a scoop and you have to force it into the eye sockets and into those small detailed areas. And then when you turn it face down, it won't come back out, because this stuff is that viscous that if you was to pull it up like that, it will probably stay like that for a while. You also have to watch the tusks on this. So if you can, I'm not sure how well this is going to show, but put something flat on here. So if I was to make this flat and pour resin in, it will go over these tusks before it fills in this area. If I just pour the resin, if I just pour the rubber in so it comes up to say here, then you end up with a gap. So you can't have a gap. So once we've finished pouring in some rubber, you need to put a spatula in and make sure that you've joined this up. Otherwise it's going to have a bridge, and when you make your cast, it won't come out. If these get buried too deep, you won't be able to get them out either. So we need to be able to see them. It doesn't matter if a little bit gets poured on top or around, because you can just cut that off with a scalpel once everything's dried, because these all have to be 2-part moulds. So the way there's nothing that showed me how to suspend parts, so the only way I can think of is to use some blue tack, which doesn't stick that great to 3D prints, but it's the best solution I came up with, and that is a cocktail stick. And then make sure the orientation, everything's correct, and then use that to suspend it while you pour in the mix. So you have to make sure it's not touching the bottom. So this one is positioned quite nice. It's the best I can do anyway. The flame's a little bit different. This mould's much smaller, because there's no point in wasting a large amount on something that's doesn't need to be heat resistant. So this is just going to be epoxy resin. So what I'm going to try to do is make this weak so it'll pull off easy. I'm going to pour some of the solution into the mould, and then I'm just going to drop this in and hope that it works, basically, because it's just so small. If I put a wedge on the top here, you can't pour anything in there. So I'm going to some scales. I'm going to take some part A. So that's 40.5 grams. Looks like peanut butter. And that should be about right. Nope, it's gone over. Oh, this is the spatula thing. I'll get these out of the way. Because we're on the clock. So I tend to start with the outside. So I'm just going to start with this small mould first. And I'm going to empty the rest out into this big mould. Now if this sets the way it looks now, this will be a good mould. And a couple of air bubbles, because I'm going to recast this one. it's already becoming so much more viscous. Rather than waste this, I am going to just pour this into one of my other moulds. So, like I say, it's just not wasted. As you can see now, I've finished the pour. Sorry if the camera angles was crap there. You have to, you know what I mean, it's not something that I can't move the camera while I'm pouring, and I'm on my own. So now that the resins had time to settle out and I poured a little bit out, this has actually turned out rather well. And this is exactly what I wanted, which is to be able to see the tusks so that they can be scraped off. So once this is set, you just take the scalpel and you just go around the edge and scrape off the top layer. Then when we pull the top half on, it will make a cast that when it's separated, you won't have one of the tusks embedded so deep into the mould that you can't get the model out without cutting the mould. Some you do have to cut the mould, unfortunately. That's just the way it works. This one's not so important. I've let the resin set a little bit and then I've just plopped it in. Once this is finished drying, I will remove the sticks and stuff and I'll pour another layer on top, and hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll be able to pour in my resin, put my LED inside, let that cure, and when it's cured I'll be able to pull the mould apart into two halves. And the good thing about resin is it's easy to polish and make glossy again, so that's the plan for that one. But this stuff sets really quick, like I say, which is why I liked it. So you don't have to wait like 12 hours for to be working on your mould again. In about 2 hours time or less, this will be rock solid and I'll be ready to start the next stage. So a couple of hours have gone past and this mould has set. So I've just started scraping away the excess silicone from the the excess rubber. So we just want a nice clean model. So this is about as clean as I'm going to get. I might actually just so now that we've cleaned that up, we can go on to the next stage. So the Vaseline is gonna stop the two layers of latex from joining together. Wipe off any excess Vaseline. So technically that should be good to go. Technically. giving me a So I'll start the pour again. So I'm not sure how this is going to go. It should be fine. So I'm going to call this a day and leave this to set. Yeah, these aren't been my best videos. It's taken a bit of time to get back into recording and getting used to it again. We've been not recording anything for a few weeks, so not been very well. So yeah, and the first thing I try and do is turn plastic prints into metal prints.